Module 11, Phylum Porifera, the sponges. You are likely familiar with the first phylum I'm going to talk about. It's Phylum Porifera, commonly called the sponges. Now, most sponges that you use at home are not from the ocean, but are man-made. Most species of sponges are found in the ocean, though there are a few freshwater species. Many people are surprised to learn that sponges are animals. They don't really move around, but are attached to a surface, and they don't look like they even have organized bodies. But when you learn a little more about them, you begin to see that they have a measure of complexity and order to their structure and the way they live. First, after the previous section in this module and looking at some images of sponges, can you figure out what type of symmetry they have? Well, they don't really have any type of symmetry. Sponges can form many shapes, some encrusting hard surfaces, others forming bulbous figures, and even others growing into large cup-like structures. They come in a rainbow of colors too and can grow from a few centimeters to several feet in size. Their bodies are organized into two layers of cells with a thin jelly-like substance in between. We call the outer layer the epidermis. An epidermis is an outer layer of cells designed to provide protection. The jelly-like material in between the two cell layers is called mesenchyme. You will learn that the term mesenchyme is used for other things in biology. The same with epidermis. That happens a lot in science as well as in all language. In the same way that the word bear can mean an animal or to carry something, know that some scientific terms also have more than one meaning or use. Sponges do not have bones for support, but instead, many have a network of stiff spicules. Spicules are primarily located in the mesenchyme and, depending on the sponge species, are made of calcium carbonate or silica. Sometimes the spicules extend beyond the mesenchyme and through the epidermis, making the sponge spiky or furry. Now, there are some sponges that do not have any spicules at all. They get their support from a flexible yet tough protein called spongin. Sponges without spicules are much softer than those with spicules. If you use a natural sponge to wash your car, for example, you would not want one with spicules, as those are usually hard and scratchy. Well, if sponges cannot move around, how do they eat? They make their prey come to them. If you've ever held a natural sponge, you know it's full of small holes and tunnels. These canals are lined with choanocytes, or collar cells. Collar cells are flagellated cells that push water through a sponge. Their flagella continuously beat back and forth, causing a current of water to move through the sponge. As water moves through, any bacteria or algae that are in the water are taken in and eaten by the sponge. Now, sponges do not have a digestive system, so they have special cells to break down their food. These cells, located in the mesenchyme, are called amoebocytes. Amoebocytes are cells that move using pseudopods and perform different functions in different animals. These cells travel around the jelly-like mesenchyme and digest the food the sponge has taken in. Then, they transport the digested food to the various parts of the sponge's body. As they do that, they take in any waste products from the cells inside the sponge and then move to the epidermis where they can release them. And because they're all moving all over the sponge, bringing food and removing wastes, they also exchange gases, bringing oxygen to the inside cells and removing carbon dioxide. Amoebocytes do one more thing too. They're responsible for making the calcium carbonate or silica that make up the spicules. Now, once the sponge has taken in the water from its surroundings, it has to make a way for it to leave. So, more collar cells are responsible for that. Therefore, sponges are constantly pulling in water and driving it back out as they remove the nutrients and necessary gases from the water and release their wastes into it. That's why there have to be so many holes and canals in sponges, so that water can move throughout them. As I said earlier, if you have ever used a natural sponge, it likely was one without any spicules. You were holding the skeleton of a once living sponge. And what was the skeleton made of? The flexible and tough spongin material. Sponges have several options for reproduction. They can reproduce by budding. This is a type of asexual reproduction where the sponge just pinches off a piece of its cells and a new individual is formed. They can regenerate broken off parts as well. Additionally, if conditions are unfavorable, sponges can form a gemule. A gemmule is a cluster of cells encased in a hard spicule-reinforced shell. So, like a cyst, gemmules can survive during cold temperatures, and once temperatures are warmer, they will break open and the cells inside will reproduce, growing as a new sponge. Sponges can also reproduce sexually. If conditions are just right, their collar cells will produce either eggs or sperm. The gametes are released into the ocean, usually triggered by the time of year and the cycle of the moon. This way, all sponges in an area are likely to release their gametes at the same time, increasing the possibility for a sperm and egg cell to meet and form a zygote.